Around America to win the vote. Two suffragists, a kitten, and 10,000 miles by Mara Rockliff, illustrated by Hadley Hooper. On April 6, 1916, a little yellow car set out from New York City. It carried tools, spare parts, a teeny tiny typewriter, an itsy bitsy sewing machine, one stout leather trunk bursting with useful things, two smiling women, and a wee black kitten with a yellow ribbon tied around its neck. The taller woman was Neil Richardson. The smaller one was Alice Burke. Together they planned to drive all the way around America. It was a great big country, but they had a great big cause. Alice told reporters. Votes for women, Nell agreed. They said the typewriter and the sewing machine were all part of their plan. If anyone said women didn't have the brains to vote, then Nell would dash off a poem right then and there to prove that they did. If anyone said they should cook and sew and leave running the nation to the men, then Nell would whip up an apron while Alice gave a speech to prove they could do both. And if the two of them could circle the United States 10,000 bumpy, muddy, unmapped miles, facing danger and adventure, all alone, with just each other and a kitten in their little yellow car, well, that would prove that women could do anything. So off they went. That very first day, they had their first adventure when a horse pulling a wagon down a narrow road refused to let them pass. Votes for women, Alice told the horse. Neil tied a yellow daffodil behind his ear, and they went on their way. In Philadelphia, they stood up on their seats to speak to the great city crowd. Nell didn't need to write a poem on her typewriter or sew an apron on her sewing machine. Men and women cheered. But the next morning, blizzard! Nell and Alice dug into their trunk of useful things, drove through howling wind and swirling snow to Baltimore, where they arrived in time to be the guest of honor at a very fancy party. The trunk held a few useful things for parties, too. The next day, when they stopped for gas, a crowd of men clustered around the little yellow car. Alice hopped up onto the seat to give her speech, but no one listened, so she told them all about the car instead. Votes for women, the men said, and waved as Nell and Alice drove away. After a flying visit to the nation's capital, they came upon the bumpiest and muddiest road yet. The little yellow car went bump and squelch and finally got stuck. As the car sank, Nell and Alice jumped into the icy stream. They cranked and cranked and cranked the engine, but it wouldn't start. Votes for women, Alice said to encourage Nell while she cranked. Nell grumbled, and good roads. In the trunk, they found a lantern and a blanket and a box of candy from their friends. They huddled, wet and shivering, under the blanket and ate candy till the sun came up and two strong mules appeared to pull their car out of the mud. In Virginia, Nell and Alice passed a school, and all the children ran to see the little yellow car. They hung over it and wouldn't let the women, or the kitten, go until Alice promised to mail them a picture postcard from someplace very far away. They drove on, through fields of singing birds and butterflies and goldenrod, and nearly fell into a hole where a bridge used to be. Next came deep puddles, sticky clay, and thick, wet sand. In South Carolina, a whole town turned out and treated them to an all-yellow lunch. In Georgia, they joined a circus parade. In Alabama, they sipped tea and sampled wafers and nibbled on stuffed dates. Everywhere, They met crowds. Everywhere, Nell and Alice told them, V for W. Outside Gulfport, Mississippi, the little yellow car finally found a mud puddle it couldn't cross. They sneaked the kitten onto the train and smuggled it into a fine hotel in New Orleans. The little yellow car arrived, and they were on their way. They dodged bullets at the Mexican border, drove on through the desert, and got lost for days, till finally they reached California, where they won a medal for driving a long way to the fair, all the way across America. But they were only halfway to the finish line. They still had lots of miles and lots of adventures on the road ahead. On September 30th, 1916, a little yellow car drove into New York City. It carried mud and dust and signatures and souvenirs from all around America, and two smiling and sunburned women and a full-grown cat. They arrived to a grand welcome and a great big yellow cake. The cat ate 7 slices, according to the next morning's Tribune. After 10,000 bumpy, muddy, unmapped miles, Nell was ready for a rest. And Alice? She turned right around and crossed the country all over again. This time, she took the train. Thank you so much for reading. I hope you enjoyed this book.